Howdy ladies and gents, my name is Thom Gibson, and last month I started a series where I'd be reading 2 books a month, one fiction, one non-fiction, and I'd be sharing some of the things that I read with you. But then I thought, what could I do to make it more fun? And I like beef jerky. So this is the first official month of books and beef jerky. I bought a couple of Krave brand beef jerky on Amazon. This is not sponsored yet, but I've got sweet Chipotle beef jerky, Krave chili lime beef jerky, and black cherry barbecue pork jerky. So I'm gonna eat these and talk about the books that I read. First, let's try the sweet Chipotle jerky. I like that they're pretty small. It's only 1 ounce, and so it's like a perfect snack size. I smell something. I can smell the paprika. That's one of the first ingredients. And it's got paprika, chipotle, white vinegar, predominantly paprika. That's probably the strongest taste. It's not as tough as I would like. I kind of like beef jerky to be a little bit tougher. Pretty good. I don't think I would get like a 1-pound bag of it, but it's pretty good. So the fiction book that I read this month was Ready Player One. Even though the movie came out at the end of March, I still really wanted to read it before I saw the movie. And this was a really fun read. I had just come from reading Dune last month, and that was kind of dense. It's an easy read, and for the most part at the end of every chapter, I wanted to keep reading and see what was going on. Being born in 1987, I didn't grow up in the 80s, so there was a few of the 80s references that I knew of what he was talking about, but a lot of it was a little bit before my time. I hadn't played most of the games that they referred to, outside of the context of maybe playing them online once or twice or in an arcade. My first console was a Nintendo Entertainment System, so it was all about the original Super Mario, the original Zelda, this one soccer game. Most of the references were Atari or arcade games from the 80s. And as classic as they are, I've never actually seen Ferris Bueller's Day Off or The Breakfast Club, so I could not fully appreciate some of those references either. Some of the things I was thinking about when I was reading it was the whole idea of how school was done in the Oasis. The way that he talked about it as far as the early childhood games that he played, that seemed to make a lot more sense, where it was all this like kind of play and these interactive experiences and he was learning through doing. But then I just thought it was kind of weird that in this virtual reality world where anything is possible, that they were still sitting in classrooms in rows and listening to like a lecture. He did say that they would go on these incredible field trips and the teacher could turn the classroom into Mars. I just thought a universe that you could create anything and you're still in a classroom and there's blocks on what you can actually access from when you're actually in that classroom and you have to be there at a certain time. It just seems like it would be much more freeform. Like it sounded like what it was as far as like the stuff that he learned when he was real young in the Oasis. The whole story really makes you think of virtual reality, and this kind of came up in one of my classes earlier this week where we weren't talking about this book, but we were talking about eSports and how the Olympic Committee is considering making eSports a part of the Olympics and how people are getting scholarships for eSports and video games these days, and these people that are streaming online are getting millions of dollars. And granted, the likelihood of being a successful gamer is probably as likely as becoming a professional athlete, but one of my students was like, but that's not even real. They're not even actually doing anything. But are they? It's a game that they are in the top 1% of those who can actually play it. Perhaps it just doesn't have the draw of the feats of physical performance and what the human body can do, but maybe it is, because I mean, you are controlling a remote and you are thinking and strategizing. As I was looking for questions to reflect on regarding Ready Player One, I saw one of them that says, what kind of virtual reality do novels provide? In the same context, you can think like, oh, if I'm just sitting here reading a book, I'm not actually doing anything and my mind is somewhere else and I'm living in an artificial reality that's created by this novel, by this book. And I hadn't thought of it that way. So I don't know where I land on it. I can say that reading the book, it definitely sounded cooler than like when I saw the movie and you could see the people that were wearing the headsets that were kind of reaching out like that, and it kind of looks silly because it's like they really aren't there. They're just kind of like in this room empty and by themselves. But that takes me to the movie. I did finally see the movie yesterday and I really liked it. I'd heard that there were a lot of changes in the movie. I was surprised by how big some of those changes were, but I know that Ernest Cline, the author of this book, also helped write the screenplay for that, so he had his hand in it. So I'm guessing that they probably had to take out a lot of stuff because it was already 2 hours and 20 minutes, and then in the process of taking out a lot, you're like, oh, well, I can't just now keep it exactly the same with these big holes missing that were originally in the story. And so it seemed like another version of the book. Like it followed the general plot structure, but so many of the details were different. But the visual effects and the action sequences were awesome. I think it was really special that Steven Spielberg was the one that got to make it, because so many of the references in the book were callbacks to Steven Spielberg movies. And I was watching an interview with him and he even said like reading the book was such a bizarre flash forward and flashback at the same time. But that was Ready Player One. I had a lot of fun reading it. If you like video game sci-fi or the 80s, I think you'll enjoy it. On to Beef Jerky number 2. Actually, I'm gonna go with the pork jerky. This one is the black cherry barbecue, pork raised without added hormones. It smells good. This one doesn't seem to have one specific spice that kind of comes out above the rest. The texture is the same as the other one. Doesn't taste significantly different than beef. It's a softer flavor than the previous one. I'm not getting black cherry barbecue though. It's a good flavor, but I don't feel it tastes. I don't taste the black cherry aspect of it. But I do like it. And the second book that I read was When by Dan Pink. Dan Pink wrote Drive, A Whole New Mind, a bunch of other books that I really like. And the subtitle of the book is The Scientific Secrets of Perfect Timing. So he did a ton of research about timing, and the book is broken up into different segments. The jerky is making my mouth dry. The book is broken up into 3 different segments where he's just talking about the day, and then the second segment is about beginnings, middles, and ends, and the third segment's about synchronization. I'm gonna do less of a summary and more of my takeaways and the things that I found interesting about the book. So regarding the day as a whole, he talked about a lot of research on the optimal time of day given your age as well as your general tendencies. But no matter what your optimal time of day is, most people's patterns kind of followed this rise in the beginning, this dip in the middle, and then kind of like a second wind. Some of the implications that I took from that was him talking about doing your more creative tasks during your non-optimal times of day. For me, my least optimal time of day is kind of that 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock time frame. I'm really productive and on in the mornings and then start to pick up in the evening again if I start working again. But I feel pretty useless in that afternoon slump, and I found that it's a lot easier for me to do something like make this video or any other creative pursuit during that time period than it is to try to do lesson plans or grade papers or respond to emails or tasks that don't demand a ton of creativity or just not generally that fun for me. I did kind of think it was funny that my wife Sarah's kind of graph would be inverted. She's super tired in the mornings, she's super tired in the evenings, but that 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock, well, virtually no one really sees that as their optimal time of day. That's the time that she's like, all right, let's get some studying done, let's get some stuff done, let's go do some errands. So she's generally on when most other people are like, this is my least productive time of day. According to the research, the best time to exercise depends on what your goals are. If you want to lose weight, make sure that it becomes part of your routine or boost your mood, it's better to exercise first thing in the morning. But if your goal is to avoid injury or be at peak performance, it's better to exercise in the late afternoon or early evening. Scientifically, the best time to drink coffee is 60 to 90 minutes after you wake up, because when you wake up, your body naturally releases cortisol, which is a hormone that acts as the body's natural waking up hormone. And so whenever you drink coffee, it actually suppresses some of that cortisol, but the natural cortisol begins to wear off 60 to 90 minutes after you wake up. So that's the ideal time to take some coffee and then kind of regain that energy. Regarding taking breaks, the research shows that high performers will work in 52-minute chunks with 17-minute breaks in between. And talking about that midday slump, napping can be a great thing as long as your nap is from 20 to 25 minutes, and he recommends the nappuccino, where you take a cup of coffee right before you take a nap, because it takes about 20 minutes for the caffeine to start taking effect in your body, and so by the time that you get up, the caffeine is beginning to take effect, and the fact that you slept less than 25 minutes keeps your body from going into a deeper sleep that leaves you kind of groggy instead of feeling rested when you get up from the nap. In the sections where he's talking about beginnings, middles, and ends, there was an implication for school start times because the teens do have a later biological start time and optimal time, and so starting after 8:30 is ideal, which is good because our school does start at 8:30. There's this whole section on the midlife crisis and whether it's only societal or if there's an actual biological aspect to it. And so they did these studies on these apes, and the researchers had ways of measuring positive affect in the apes, and they noticed that same dip in middle-age apes as they do in people. And so even though it is biological, he talks about ways to kind of fight through that midlife slump. And one idea that he took from Warren Buffett was to write your top 25 goals for what you want to accomplish in your life. Then take the top 5 out of those 25 that were of the most importance to you or the most significant that you wanted to complete. So then you have 2 lists, your top 5 things and the rest of the 20 things on the other list. Then start planning how to achieve those 5 things and don't do anything on the other list of 20 things until the 5 things are done. I think this would be a really interesting practice to do. It'd be kind of hard for some things to get done. Like if your goal is to raise a child to be a happy and healthy and contributing member of society, you can't really like do that until the child is an adult and to see if you've succeeded or not. So I imagine there'd have to be things that you could actually do, like write a book or go visit this country or whatever it is. Doing a few important things well is far more likely to propel you out of the slump than a dozen half-finished projects are. So I really want to do that, and then I think it could be a cool video series to kind of show the pursuit of those 5 things. I don't know. In regards to the science of endings, we generally remember something by the way it ends. So if your vacation ended pretty poorly, but the rest of the vacation was awesome, you're still left with a bad taste in your mouth about the vacation. So one of the implications of that is if you have good news and bad news for someone, always give them the bad news first so they can end on a positive note. And on your vacation, plan an awesome ending experience to kind of leave the vacation on a high note. There was one idea that I kind of want to try to do next year in my classrooms as far as ending a school year with meaning. One teacher, she had her students write a 6-word memoir at the beginning of the year, a 6-word memoir at the end of the year, and then the students would read the beginning of the year memoir followed by the end of the year memoir to the class to sort of bring the time that they had together full circle. So that was when I thought the research was really interesting. As far as the takeaways, I think Dan Pink does a really good job in all of his books to have like a chapter of information and then what can you do about this information following that chapter. I felt that some of those what you can do about this information was a little bit of common sense, but it's just like now the research backs it up. But those were my takeaways from when. And our last beef jerky of the day is going to be Krave Gourmet Beef Cuts Chili Lime. I have a feeling this one's going to be a bit of a stronger flavor. Smells good. Smells chili and limey. Feels kind of stickier. It's softer than the other two. Really strong lime taste that comes in after a few seconds. It's good. It's a little sweeter than I like. I don't really like super sweet flavors with beef jerky. So that is the first official episode of Books and Beef Jerky. Regarding next month's books, I plan on reading The Hobbit, because I've never read that before. I plan on reading The Art of Learning. This was written, if you've ever seen the movie from the early 90s, Searching for Bobby Fischer. It was a story of a chess prodigy, a young boy named Josh Waitzkin. It's based on a true story. But this is kind of his journey as far as how he learns and thinks about things. Because after he was this world-renowned chess master at a really young age, he started to learn Tai Chi, and he was a learner all over again. He talked about that experience. So I'm pretty interested. This was recommended by my jiu-jitsu coach. And I've been trying to do 2 books a month. I'm gonna throw in 2 bonus books this month. Me and one of my friends were talking about faith and spirituality the other day, and he's agnostic. And he told me that this book called The Grand Inquisitor is a pretty good representation of how he views faith and the organized church and things like that. It's kind of a satirical look of the organized church and kind of organized religion as a whole. It's pretty small because it's actually a smaller chapter from a 800-page novel of, I believe, short stories. So this one shouldn't take too long. And then I'm also going to be reading on the other side of that, Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis. C.S. Lewis was an atheist that became a Christian, and he sought to write a book that was what Christianity is at its essential core. What could I write about Christianity that virtually every Christian could say, yes, I agree with that. I've read this one before, but it's been a little while, and so I recommended this to my friend, and I wanted to reread it myself as well. Let me know what your thoughts are on Ready Player One, on when, if you plan on joining me for any or all of the other books that I plan on reading in the month of May. Thank you for joining me on Books and Beef Jerky. Hopefully this video is not too long, and if you'd like to stay in the loop with any upcoming videos and upcoming episodes of Books and Beef Jerky, go ahead and subscribe, and thank you so much for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video.